In this presentation, you're going to get some great advice on getting an understanding of the critical elements in your lean journey. Hello and welcome to our ongoing series of business improvement presentations presented by Mango. We have John Bott from Minicaps, based here in Christchurch in New Zealand. John works all over New Zealand helping companies on their lean journey. So if you need to contact John, just there's his details there, there's his website, his email and telephone. Just give him a bell if you need any help with your lean journey. So over to you, John, and let's get stuck into this presentation.
All right, thanks, Craig. So yeah, we want to talk about some of the things that are going to help you on that lean journey, and a lot of that is around the things that are going to change from there. And one of the first things that creates you some challenges is your management team. So one of the things that the biggest change of everything is that it doesn't work with the command and control structure. Lean is almost like a democratization of the thinking. So we're interested in pulling the information from the guys on the floor who are actually doing the work. And if you think about it, really, I'll use a different phrase, but if you think the same thinking that got you into whatever your current situation is not going to get you back out. And the thinking that got you there has probably come from the management team that you have. So we need them to think differently and allow you to start pulling things from that. So that involves them to be a lot more involved and a lot more visible on what we call the GEMBA, where the work happens. Not driving a set of charts on desks. The management teams get really sucked into, we have to know all these KPIs, we have to have all these charts, all this data. The best data you're going to get is when you go into the floor and talk to the people doing the work. And that's a really different approach. And part of that approach is about them being more humble and willing to ask questions. And when they ask the questions, shut up and listen. And listen with the intent of listening. You know, a lot of people when they start, they ask a question, what's going through their heads is actually the next question they want to ask or the point they want to make. And that means you're not listening. So we really want them to ask a question and then listen with the intent of learning. And the thing with that is accepting that people might not have the right answer or what they perceive to be the right answer, but as a management team, your part is to help them along that way. If you come from the command and control environment, it's really, really hard for the guys reporting up to be ready to open up and give those suggestions, especially if they're being kind of knocked back and time again. So it will take a little bit of time and there will be suspicion and you just have to keep doing it. I've seen a lot of companies try to do it and they go, oh, it didn't work because people wouldn't, we asked them questions and nobody had answers. Well, they're not used to having answers. So give them a chance. You have to create an environment that supports the right mode of thinking, and it's very different. And it takes time to take that. And it also requires you to kind of step out of that firefighting mode. Not everything needs to be fixed right away, and it's a longer term game. So it's about investing the time to develop the people and the thinking. And that's, again, management largely is focused on, we have to do this now, we have to do it urgently, we have to change the business overnight, and that's not going to happen. So one of the biggest barriers to any lean transformation isn't the guys on the floor, it's the guys in the management side of things, and that's a big challenge for them. As I mentioned already, it's also about not taking short-term thinking. So businesses are very focused on the end of month, end of quarter, financial years. It's very short-term thinking, and if we keep thinking like that, we're not going to step back and think on the long term. And lean transformations isn't an overnight thing. I've had people say, well, we should, you've been with us now for 3 weeks. Why aren't we seeing a difference? And go, well, yeah, 3 weeks in your time is what I call the disparity. The client says you've been with us 3 weeks, but the consultant's actually only been there 3 days, just once a week. You should be further on. Well, potentially, but more likely, you've spent the first couple of weeks trying to figure out what actually goes on and how it works. But if something's going to stick, you have to do it over and over, and so sometimes means that you have to make a decision that's going to take you look for the longer term and break up that short term thinking. So you have to keep reinforcing, and behaviours don't change overnight, and they don't change on one discussion or one example. You have to keep reinforcing it. And the things that make behaviours easier to kind of embed is where you make it easier for them to do. If it's easier for you to reach a glass of water than it is a can of Coke, you're going to drink more water. It's the same with kind of lean stuff, and that takes a little bit of change of thinking and work from the management team. So a little bit of kind of what is lean, because everybody thinks of lean as a whole bunch of set of tools. It's 5S, it's just in time, it's this, it's that. It's not. They are ways of delivering the outcome, but lean in itself is a methodology. So it's a set of thinking practices that are there to look at how you deliver products to the customer at the highest quality you can, at the lowest cost, and in the shortest possible lead time. And that was where it originated. Way back in the 50s in Toyota, when they started with TPS, it was about how do we get product to the customer quickly so that we don't have to keep stock. And the basis of, if I don't have to keep stock and I can do it quickly, then my costs and my cash flow is better. And that was its main goal. And so we use the continuous improvement tools to increase the quality, to reduce the lead times, and those then result in reduced cost. Okay, so if your quality is going up, your rework's coming down, cost of the product goes up, and the money is going down. So it's a set of tools from there. And it's really about what do we want, how do we do it. And we achieve both of those things by 2 pillars. So lean really actually only has 2 pillars. Everybody talks about the lean house and all these tools, but there's actually only 2 pillars of lean that we really look at. The first one is respect for people, not continuous improvement. That's the second one. You can't get continuous improvement unless you have respect for people. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go through and what that really means. And it's always interesting when you talk to people about what do you mean, what's your impression of respect for people? And it starts off with, being nice and being, and it's actually not that. It's some other stuff, and we'll delve into that as we go. So in terms of lean management, what does that look like? Well, it's about giving them a different focus. So it's not a focus on the numbers per se, it's the focus on the people. The main job of a manager or a leader in lean, and it shouldn't necessarily be in lean, is about growing people and to give them the skills and the techniques and the tools to think differently, to apply that lean thinking to do a better job and make it easier to do their job. And so if you think about that, you've got to take them somewhere. So it's about saying, well, here's the end goal. And you sometimes hear people talk about the true north of the company. Here's the big end vision that we want to get to. We want to be the best of this in the world. We want to deliver the most number of meals to people, whatever it happens to be. And so it's about setting people up to win. And you do that by setting tasks and challenges and setting standards and accountability and frequent feedback. And the feedback is not about sugarcoating. You hear the phrase the shit sandwich. There's a bit of good news, there's the bad news, and there's the good news again. People don't hear the bad news in the middle. They hear the good news out the side and walk away thinking they're doing great, right? And that's pretty disrespectful for the person if you think about it. If I'm not willing enough to say to you, hey, look, you didn't do as well there as you could have done, because we know you can do better. This wasn't great. how can I help you improve those two things, is much better than saying, well, that was great and this maybe not so much, but this was great as well. Have a nice day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're left feeling, well, what was that pep talk, or what did I do? You know, don't sugarcoat it. Just be honest, but be respectful with it. You give the exposure to lean tools and the business metrics and the performance results, and be open with them. Will improve things, because again, as a manager, we're looking to empower the shop floor to make the decisions, so that effectively you don't have to. You know, if you think about yourself as the coach, that's going to be a better way of working. And so, as I say, when we start talking about what is the respect for people stuff, we start talking about creating that safe working environment, about how we communicate with them, about being honest. All of those things come into play from there. And one of the most important things to say is it's about enabling people. And so just so we're all clear about what enabling is, and companies talk about empowering people. We don't. It's not about empowering. Empowering is a bit of I guess, an overused buzzword. And really, I like to talk about enabling them, because there's the definition of enable. It's giving someone an authority and the means to do something to make it possible. If I'm going to enable you, I've got to tick those things off. So, you know, this is what we want you to do, and you have the authority to make the decisions that you need to make to allow that to move forward. And you're probably going to need some training for some of that, or you're going to need some help, or you're going to need some cash to do it, whatever it is. If you're not providing those things, then you're not really enabling them. And you say, well, I've empowered them, I've given them the authority to do it, but have you really? Probably not. And most companies don't. They kind of go, you know, this is your responsibility, you fix it, I've empowered you to do it, and away the manager goes. And the poor person standing there thinking, well, shit, you know, I really need to change what my desk looks like. I really could do with this spanner, and I could do with an hour or so to really understand the root cause of this, but they don't get the power to do any of that. So it's really about enabling people to do it. So you have to give them time, you have to give them some training, you have to give them some space in terms of time and area to do things, help them with the equipment, parts to test on. So if you want to kind of improve the quality of something, and you're going to change something, well, you're going to end up with potentially some scrap as you're testing out the idea. Accept that you're going to have that, because the payback is going to be huge in terms of engagement in the person, but also the end product that you're going to carry on. So you need some parts to test on. You might need some other people, and you probably need some problem-solving techniques if you don't already have them. So even some basic ones, you know, 5 whys or a fishbone, ACE, some A3 thinking. Those are things that you need to kind of give people and give them the time to learn to effectively get their thinking differently. And lean is to say it's all about that thinking. And if we don't change the thinking, doesn't matter what else happens, you're doing the same thing. So if we think about the kind of 5 principles of lean, which hopefully people have heard, you know, identify value, and that's about value from the customer point of view. And we mean not just everybody gets focused on the end customer, but you have a multitude of internal customers who all need value. And you know, what value is for one person is different from the next person. I'll give you a little example. Working with a company at the moment, and one of the operators said to their person on the right, who's giving them the product for the next stage, you know, if you provided it to me in this way, arranged in this way, it would make it easier for me to do my job. So value for that person was how the material was presented to them to let them do their job. Working back and forth, they figured out exactly how they could present it, and they took 12 seconds off the cycle time, which, you know, might not sound a lot, but when the operation was only a minute and a half, that's a huge improvement. And all it was a conversation about, this is what's valuable to me, it's how I get it presented. And so understanding those little bits of value throughout your whole value stream for each of your internal customers can be huge. And part of that is understanding why. You know, it's not just give me this because, this is why it's going to help me. because it then creates some ownership from there. We talk about mapping the value stream, and the value stream is really just a collection of operations that are making a product. And it might be a bunch of machines in a row. It might be a bunch of people processing a claim form, because the claim form value stream is just a bunch of things in there, and we talk about that. But the really stuff that I want to really kind of focus on is the next three, is that create and flow, establish and pull, and seek perfection, because they're the real kind of guts of lean, if you like. So we want to talk about what flow actually is, and why it's important, and the benefits of creating a pool. And the key in that last one, that seek perfection, is that word seek. We want to kind of really focus on, you're not going to get it perfect right first time. In fact, you're never going to get it perfect, because perfect doesn't exist. And those people, and we talk a lot with clients around, perfection is the enemy of good. If you keep going on, I want perfection, you're never going to get it, and actually it drives people down. If you can accept even just a little bit better, and then a little bit better, and a little bit better, suddenly you get a lot better. It's that 1%, give me 1%, give me 1%, and they all compound. And that's what we're interested in kind of seeking perfection from there. And so, the most important thing we want people to remember about lean is it's about thinking. It's about using people's brains and their adaptability. A person is the most adaptable element of your entire business. And you just look at that in terms of, well, today they're doing this, tomorrow they're doing that. Next month they might have moved into a whole different position or making a whole different product. It's not about the tools. The tools are exactly that. They're a tool to help you accomplish something, but the tool doesn't work if you don't have the brain behind it. And we have to create the brain first from there. So it's about practice as well. You have to keep doing it until you get it from there. But also it's hands-on. It's not sitting in a classroom all theory and read book. Great. You can read book on lean, but until you go off and try something, you actually don't really know it. And that's one of the most important parts. It's hands-on. That's why we harp on about the GEMBA a lot. Is, well, let's go and look. There's a problem. Great. Let's go down there and have a look. Another one, and again, it's one where it kind of links back to it's not a short-term approach, is that it's also not possible, I believe, to teach the next lesson if you haven't learned the first one. So what I mean by that is, as we go through and we try to kind of say, well, look, this is how you could look at waste, so this is what this particular waste is. If we keep going and keep giving you the next bit of our training and the next bit of the training, you actually don't get a chance to embed the first part. And until you learn that first part, the next part's probably not going to make much sense to you. And so, being accused of being a little bit zen with it, you say, well, yeah, we could teach that, but you're not ready for that yet because you haven't learned this lesson, and I can't teach you the next lesson until you've learned that. And we find that works really well, especially the guys on the floor. They're really receptive to it, and it just kind of reinforces that it's about your brain from there. So one of the first things we need to start thinking about in lean is what the differences are. And so everybody's, you hear the lean house, but one of the things we're interested in is helping with the questions. And so the first thing we're interested in is that situational approach. Well, what is the real problem that you're trying to help solve? And that's the first question that you should, when you go somewhere and somebody's got a problem, that's the question you actually want. What's the problem? But it might take you a couple of attempts to find out what the real problem is. So it might be, well, I'm producing rubbish. Okay, well, that's great. Well, define rubbish. Oh, well, it's putting a hole here when it should put a hole there. Okay, well, why is it putting a hole there? What creates the hole? That. What decides how it puts the hole? Well, this problem here. And eventually you get down to what the real problem is, which is, well, the coding in the machine isn't right. Okay, well, let's figure out how we fix that. Again, the short-term thinking that we have to fix it really quickly tends to stop at that very first question, and we don't. That's where the 5 why approach comes in. You know, we want to keep going until we go, right, that's what we think the real problem is here. Now we can start thinking about it. So the next question is when I think about, say, that process improvement side of things, is how will we improve the work that we're doing? There's no point doing bad work and keep doing bad work. One, that's disrespectful. You know, if our quality at the line is 80% or 70%, and we're happy and we just keep doing that, if you think about what that does for the person sitting there, it's really not the most rewarding thing. You know, what did you do today? Well, we produced, 30% bad stuff, but the rest of it was okay. Versus, well, we did 90%, it was really good, and then we figured out another thing that was wrong, which was really cool, and now we're up again. It's a different way of thinking, different way of work. And it's also about not doing needless work as well. And there's a lot of needless work goes on where it doesn't actually add value to the customer. You're just polishing something, or you're doing something, or you've got a tolerance that's too tight and the customer doesn't really need it, they'll never see it. It's pointless work. And again, if you think about yourself, you sitting doing pointless work, and I've been there myself. I think I've told you before, a report, when I had a proper job in a corporate company, I had to deliver a report every single month, and it took a bit to put this report together. And one month I didn't send it. I missed it. I was off, and nobody said anything. And so the next month I didn't send it either. And this went on for 6 months until somebody phoned up and said, "I didn't put your report last week." No. Well, it's really important. Well, it's clearly not. I haven't sent it for 6 months. It was completely pointless work. Wasn't used for anything at all. From a capability side of things, we talk about how we're going to develop people who are going to actually do the work, and it is at all levels. It's not just about developing people for the work they do today as well. You obviously need to do that, and some of that is developing them both in terms of the skill to do that work, that physical work or mental work that they're doing, but also the tools to do the problem solving things. But you also want to think about what's this person's next job going to be, and how to develop them towards that as well, because you want to keep growing your people through. And as you develop them towards understanding the next job they're going to do, 9 times out of 10 that feeds back into the job that they are doing and helps lift that up as well. So it's a really nice additional thing to be looking at. Then we're looking at the leadership and saying, well, what kind of leadership behaviours will actually work in this area? And that's really where we come back to you can't do command and control in lean. It doesn't work. It never will work. And I don't believe it works in any company, whether it's a lean company or not. And so you have to think about what do we need. And it's always about how do we make it as least impactful in terms of getting in the way as possible. How do we get out of the way and let people do the proper job, but give them the support that you want to give them? And so the last part is what mindset are we trying to do? And so if you go to an interaction with somebody and you're trying to solve a problem, if you did nothing else but kind of work through those 5 questions in your head, you're going to have a far more successful interaction with the person. But it's also going to be structured, and it's going to be consistent, and it's going to drive the right methodology, which is there. But it does fundamentally challenge the mindsets that underlie how we work. And it's a big head shift because it takes time. So again, it's not a 2-minute conversation by any stretch of the imagination. You might be there for 20, 30 minutes. But at the end of that 20, 30 minutes, you've probably solved the problem and everybody's learned something. And it won't repeat, because part of it is going to be about, well, how do we close this out? How do we make sure that it doesn't repeat? What's the new standard that we're going to set? And we're going to talk about that shortly. And so from a leadership point of view, we want you to think like a coach when it comes to leading, and how you're best going to present those questions. Remembering coaching, again, isn't a short-term thing, and it's also, again, not about being nice. If you think about some of your the very best rugby coaches, soccer coaches, sports coaches, they get respect from their teams, but they're very demanding of the teams. and that's okay. And so it's not about being there, you're great, we love you. It's sometimes about, well, hold on a minute, that's not the standard that we know you can do. We know you can be up here, so what do you need? And ask the questions, and ask the harder questions. Be a sounding board for them. Let them, you think that's going to work? Why do you think it's going to work? Okay, give it a try. Sometimes it's about being a connector. I don't know the answer, which is a great thing to be able to say as a leader. I don't know, but I know somebody who does. Have you met Betty? She's really good at that side of things. And connect those people up and let them work on it and build it up from there. And say you want to be challenged. You don't want to set targets or expectations that are, yeah, the person can meet that. Well, that's great, but you're not stretching the person, and you only grow if you're stretched. If you're continuing on that consistent level, you never get a chance to grow. And that, again, if you think about respect from people, you're disrespecting the person. You're kind of inhibiting their ability to grow. But I guess a side plug is there's a great book by a guy called Michael Bungay-Steiner, who wrote. He's a great coach. He won International Coach of the Year, Canadian guy, and he wrote a fantastic little book called The Coaching Habit, and he goes through 7 essential coaching questions that, if you use them in the order that they talk about in the book, you have the perfect coaching structure. One of his favourite ones he calls is the "all" question, and it stands for "and what else." And invariably, when you're talking to somebody and they come up with an idea, and you say, "Well, are there any other options or any other things it could be?" "Oh, I don't know. That could be this, and what else?" "Could be that, and what else?" And eventually, you get to the point where you go, "I don't know what else." Great. Now we've probably got all the options on the table. Which one do you think is right? And it's a really good way of working things out. So again, for anybody who's moving into a kind of lean way of thinking, getting your hands on that book and thinking about how am I going to be a better coach is going to pay huge dividends. And even if you don't go on a full lean transformation, just becoming more of a coaching leader will be a massive, massive help from that. So now we've got that kind of leadership mindset thinking going. We want to talk about flow. And what is flow, which again for some people slightly different in terms of way of thinking, but it's about how we move through the whole place in a short period of time. So if customer gives us an order, how quickly do we receive that? And it's being able to deliver that faster. I haven't met a company yet who said to me, well, no, being able to deliver faster would not be a strategic advantage. It's one of those. But it's, we were talking before we started this about a company who said, well, the lead time for that is 6 weeks. No, surely it can't take 6 weeks. 6 weeks seems to be a default answer for a lead time, 6 or 8 weeks. If you can deliver in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or a week, I bet you're going to get better, orders from people. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be more expensive either if we do it right. And it's all going to free up. We're also looking about how do we free up capacity. As we improve flow through a company, you automatically free up capacity on that. So just as a bit of a kind of visual, the traditional type of, if we take an assembly line, but it works in the same way as an office approach. Your traditional assembly is maybe 5 or 6 days, and actually these are times from an actual client of ours, where the first process, where somebody did some work, then they put it into their inventory, which might have been the space between a couple of desks, and then the next one. It could take them 5 to 6 days to process something through the length of the line. The line was about 15 meters long, 5.5 days. When we moved into a continuous flow process, where I finish my work and I give it to you, and you start that work, and get as close to one-piece flow. Remember, people will hear about one-piece flow, and that's when I do one bit of work and give it to you, and you do work on that right away. It's important to remember that that's not the nirvana, and you have to earn your way there. You can't go there immediately. You will break your company if you try and go there immediately, because to get there, to get to continuous flow, there's a lot of things we have to do. and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But when we moved and got the thing set up, we went from a 5 to 6 day throughput cycle to 30 minutes.
Wow.
And we largely only removed the inventory and the batching. And we fixed some quality problems as well. So there's a couple of things. And it was really great, and it took us probably about a week. And the first half of that week was working with the team doing the job to get them to come up with the ideas about what it could look like and what the barriers were. And then each one of those barriers, we got them to knock the barrier down from there. But moving to that, again, is really hard from a thinking point of view because everybody's breaking out of comfort zone. So if we think about the things that inhibit flow, because that's really what lean's about, and everybody's heard about the lean wastes. I like to kind of show it as a pipe. And if you think about all of those wastes, the defects, transport, the motion, all those things just clogging up the pipe, its flow is automatically going to be slowed down. So as we reduce those clogs, as we kind of clear the pipe out, your flow is going to actually increase. Right? And the customer only wants things to fall into the bucket at the rate they want them to fall into, which we'll talk about. You can imagine if you've got a pipe, even if it wasn't blocked up, the same thing happens. If you try and push more stuff into that pipe, there's only so much capacity it's got. And eventually, you've pushed so much in that the stuff at the back of the pile that you're trying to push in takes a long time to come out. And so as we kind of unclog the pipe, we get a bit more flow through that pipe. But if we're still pushing more in than the pipe come out, if we've still got more trying to get in than the capacity come out, you have a problem and you're not going to get improvement. So part of it is also about balancing the flow through things and how do we make the pipe bigger? Or actually, in some cases, how do we stop pushing so much in? One, we never want to push anyway, but part of it is understanding what does the customer actually need. And not understanding what the customer truly needs is one of the biggest barriers to flow, because what it results in is that knee-jerk, we need some of that, we need some of this, the customer wants that now, we need 100 of them. Well, the customer might actually, the customer might have ordered 100, but this week they might only need 10 of those 100. And next week they only need 10. And if you have the conversation with the customer, what do you actually consume? Okay, well, that's what we can make. And by switching to that mode, we call that a multi-mode line, where you might be making 3 or 4 different products and changing over in between, but in smaller batch sizes, you can actually support more customers at the same time and keep lots of people happy and reduce your lead time from there. So there's 3 keys in terms of the thinking to be able to look at these wastes. And there's the 3 different types of waste. People think waste is just one thing. That's the waste that we're talking about, all of those non-value add, defects, and all that. That's the last one. That's muda. And some of them are temporary things that happen and they'll disappear, and some are not. And it's easy to focus there. It's because it's visible. But the first thing before you get there, you really want to start looking at variability in your process. And that's, in terms of how do machines perform, how do people perform, what your demand is, anything actually that's going to create variability. Because if something's variable all the time, well, what's the standard? What's the target you're trying to hit? And you don't really know. And so we focus a lot on trying to create a standard that is repeatable. And so we'll have this is the standard output that we want to get. This is how we're going to get it. These are the instruction sets that we're going to use, and we're all going to do the same thing at the same way. And that also means when you come in to do the job that I'm doing, there's a standard way. And so training you to do that job is quicker. And yet it takes a little bit of time to put these work standards together. Because again, the best way of putting the work standards together is to talk to the troops doing the work and say, draw me what it should be, and use pictures as much as possible. Get them interacting with that. And the short-term thinking is, well, I haven't got time to do that. The long-term thinking is, well, if I do that now, I won't have to keep doing it later on, and I'll be more consistent, and it'll be quicker training, more stable process, therefore we should be better. The other part of reducing that variability is to genuinely root cause things. Generally get in there, ask those 5 whys and get to the root cause of what it really is, instead of looking at the surface. And be open about the problems. If you try and hide things away, you never surface them, and it keeps coming back. It might disappear for a little bit, but then it'll pop back up. So if you're something like poor machine maintenance is a good one, because it can disappear. You do an oil change and it might disappear for a while, and then as the oil gets gritty again because the strainer isn't working, is the kind of default example of 5 whys, your variability in the machine comes back. All right, well, we'll change the oil again and it disappears, but you never really root cause that actually we're getting shavings into it from there. And it's the same with your quality. If you can improve quality and understand why you're getting those quality defects, it has an impact on reducing the variability. So we want to bring that variability down. We also want to look at overburden, which is Muri. And that's about not placing machines, especially machines, I guess, but people as well, under unreasonable stress to kind of meet the target. If you're forcing people to work at 100% of their physical exertion every single day, they're going to get tired really quite quickly. And it's the same with machines. If you're running a machine at 100% day in, day out, that machine's going to fall over fairly quickly, especially if you don't maintain it. So you've got to allow time for that, for genuine maintenance and productive maintenance, preventive stuff that you can start predicting with. And some of that overburden can be a consequence of the variability, because if things are variable and suddenly go, oh, we've got a big order here and we're going to run all 500s when we only need to run 50, then things will come on. And finally we come to the wastes and start blaming. The reason that you want to try and start with the variability is you can imagine if you've got, say, defects that are coming out and you're trying to knock off those defects, but you've got a process that's variable, you're like trying to shoot a moving target. And so if we can reduce that variability, we can bring that down. And the more you do these things, again, if you're engaging with your team and you're upscaling your team and allowing them time to think about it, not only do you get better process, but you get better ownership of the team on their process. You also end up with a better employee who's got more skills and more knowledge that they can apply elsewhere in the business. So it becomes self-perpetuating.
Can I just interrupt here?
Mm-hmm.
Just on most organisations I've seen that have done lean, they start with the waste.
Yes.
And very few have I actually seen them actually done the first two. Why have companies gone straight? Is it the way the consultants done it, or how? I don't really know the reason. I don't know what. That's all I ever see is the waste.
Yep, it's
the waste.
Yeah, it's a great question. All of the above. I guess it's an easy PR one.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to kind of go, well, if you take all the waste out of your system, things will work better, and it absolutely will. I mean, if you only go in and remove the waste and focus on them, you will improve. But it won't be sustainable. And so it was back to that short-term, long-term thinking. It can be really quick to go in and remove the waste, because once you're used to seeing it, and again, part of the real lean is learning to see. There's a great book when we talk about value stream mapping, that came out that launched the whole thing, called Learning to See. And once you see waste, it's like the sixth sense. I see dead people. Once you see waste, you can't not see waste. It's everywhere. And I get told off my wife for complaining about the queues at the supermarket because it's just wasteful, and they're not looking at customer demand and all that sort of stuff. You can't help it. Seeing variability is harder because it's longer. It takes long. That variable cycle might be a couple of minutes. It might be a couple of days. It might be a couple of weeks. It's not quick. And so if I'm stuck in my short-term thinking, I want to attack the waste first. And so sometimes you start on the waste to get that easy win and bring people on board, and then you might go back to saying, well, now we have to kind of go at the variability, but you will then cycle back to wastes.
So in the order, you do variability first, then overburden, then waste, or is there any particular order?
My preference is always to try and attack variability first.
Because in my old days, back in the 80s and 90s when I was a quality manager, we constantly looked at variability. It was all about variability and root cause. Yep, that's on all the processes. And lean came along later, I know, 10 years later, and started looking at waste. So we've done these first two for years and forever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Forever. But I didn't. It's only now that I've actually clicked that it's all joined together.
Yeah, it's all one thing.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, so remember, lean came from is the westernized version of the Toyota production system.
Right.
And so when they kicked off back in the 50s, it was because lean. Toyota had gone bust. Because they built all this product that they couldn't sell, and the bank went, give us the money. And so when they kind of got themselves back together, they said, well, we're never going to go through that again. How do we only make what we need to make? And that's kind of as well. To do that, we have to get it through the factory pretty quick. Okay, well, how do we get it through the factory pretty quick? Well, we can't have any hold-offs. That's your wastes. Okay, how do we tackle them? Well, we have to be consistent. Okay, well, how do we be consistent? Well, we have to knock out the variability for a start. Okay, well, let's focus on what things create variability.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we also can't have machines that break down all the time. Well, why does the machine break down all the time? Well, we're running the machine night and day and not maintaining it. Well, maybe we should do something about that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that all ties together.
And so when you start thinking that mode, then by the time you get to the waste side of things, you're tackling them as you go. They're consequences or manifestations of what is happening in the variability and the overburdening stages most of the time. From that. So a great one from a waste point of view that's really easy to see is motion and transport. So people are moving around or lots of stretching or so on. Or in transport, it's things are moving around, products and waste. That's overburden when you think about it. If I'm constantly asking you to get up and move, and so I'm giving you work that you don't have to do, that's overburden. So it's
right. Yeah. I can see where they all mix.
They all mix, but from a thinking point of view, you always want to try and get as stable a process as you can, as quick as you can. And those steps to kind of take that. But it's about combination of looking at the genuinely trying to connect some data, but also doing some kind of ad hoc experiments. What if we try this, or what if we do that from there? And it's just the place that we try and get people to start first is the bottleneck. Bottles, yes, but I like bottles because you can explain with a bottle what bottleneck is. A really important thing about bottlenecks is you can actually only ever have one in your process, which is novel for some people. When we start talking about bottlenecks, I know where they are, says the manager. Bet you don't. You might know a lot of critical constraint places, but there's only ever one true bottleneck, and it's the thing that will set the beat rate for the whole assembly. And it's typically something which is going to be a core resource. It's going to be high capital or high skill. It's going to be specialist, dedicated. It's probably going to be something that's not easily replicated or flexed up and down. Hence, it's going to be the bottleneck. It's going to be the thing that limits your resource. And actually, if you wanted to think about where can I plan how much work I can get out, knowing how much you can get out the bottleneck is probably quite an important thing. And it's also where we can start and say, well, what can we do to improve the output? How do we improve the quality? How do we make it easier to do the operation? How can we get the right people in the right seats? And some of that is around the bottleneck and thinking. And this is actually where some thinking from theory of constraints can come in handy. If we optimize bottleneck and that becomes the most important thing, you're going to do better than before. And some of that, and so by focusing on bottleneck, making that hum, making it really sing really well, and kind of making it almost impossible to get the bottleneck wrong, you're going to instantly create more capacity from there. So we spend a bit of time talking about bottlenecks. And that can be, again, slightly counterintuitive. So if I have a line that kind of looks like these 8 operations, it's easy for you kind of typical manager to come along and say, well, people at the first 3 operations are just sitting there twiddling the fingers, giving them some more work to do. But you have a bottleneck in this process. It's operation number 4. So in my lean thinking, the whole line, if I give those other operations more to do, you're actually creating waste because they're doing stuff that you can't deliver. And so part of the trick is to look at it differently, is to look at it at the system. We're interested in optimizing the system, not the individual. And so instead of it looking like 4 individuals, you have to learn to look at a cell as one big block. And that one big block goes at the cycle time of whatever your bottleneck is. And so by kind of changing that thinking and saying, okay, well, how do I do that? Then it forces you back into, well, I generally have to either break apart the bottleneck, or maybe I could combine some of the other operations and take a person that I might not need. If I can rearrange some machines or some desks or some work, or redesign the product, maybe I can get a better balance on that line. So if you can't speed up the bottleneck, then you have to look at all the other operations and say, well, what can I do to reduce the labour in there? And part of that is also saying, can my bottleneck actually deliver what my customer needs? And that customer might be the next operation, or maybe the end customer. And that's where Takt Time comes in. And Takt Time is a fairly misunderstood thing, I think. One of the fun things that my daughter finds amusing, who I talk to a lot about lean stuff because she seems to enjoy it, whether she wants to or not. Is Takt is actually a German word. No, it's not Japanese. One of the few things we talk about in lean that's not Japanese. It's actually a German word for musical meter or rhythm. Right? So if you think about the beat of a metronome, for instance, click, click, that's Takt. Okay, we want you to work like that. And so if the customer wants you to deliver them 10 units a week, the Takt Time is 10 units a week, every week. So don't deliver me 50, don't deliver me 100, just deliver me 10. And so we can actually use that to work out everything from how much do we need, how long it should take, how many people do you actually need to do it. And this is where it starts kind of helping you work back. So if I've got a customer who wants 880 units a month, we picked that because it's nice, easy maths. And we've got 20 days in a month. Well, that's 44 units a day is what we need to produce. What does that mean? Well, it means that we've got 10 minutes per unit to produce. That's how long it takes. So now I can design my assembly line based on 10 minutes. And when we take that down, we say, okay, well, I only need 2 people for that. Great, what do I do with other people? Or the alternative is I can say, well, I'm actually going to find a way of delivering it with, I'm going to use 4 people. So I can do it in 5 minutes, so I can improve my cycle time. And I'm going to build an extra product at the same time or directly after this. So I'm going to turn it into a multi-mode assembly line where I'm doing some of one product really quickly, and then in the same time, so instead of having 44 units in a day, I might get 44 units in half a day, and then use the other half a day to do something for somebody else. And so understanding Takt Time and working that back to really understand what you need is going to be really beneficial from there. And that allows you to look at how you do something we call every part, every interval. And it's a way of bringing your inventory down and your work in progress down. But it is challenging. So the benefit of doing this is smaller batch sizes, less variation, faster deliveries to customers, which we'll love. But it does mean more changeovers. and you have to be good at that. And so again, you have to earn your way there by practice, practice, practice from there. So if we think about what the actual engine of lean is, if we think, it's that plan, do, check, act.
The spinning wheel.
The spinning wheel, you never stop the spinning wheel. But as you can imagine, if it's a wheel and we're going uphill to improve, it can slip back. And the reason it slips back is because we don't set a standard. So if we don't have a standard, we can't have any Kaizen, we can't have an improvement. If we don't have a standard, or we've got no respect for people in the process, we can't have any Kaizen, we can't have an improvement. And again, so with that, perfect is the enemy of good. It's about saying, well, what is the transformation we want to do? And how do we standardise that? And standardising it means we document it, we write it down. Just like an ISO, just because you've wrote it down doesn't mean it's set in concrete. It means you have the best documented process you have at the time with the knowledge that you have. Your knowledge will change and evolve, and so your standard should change and evolve with it. Your documentation should be updated as you go to stop that. And the more you do, the better you get, and the more you train your people for it, the better they'll get at it from there. And in terms of standard, if you think about your car, that you've got 4 tires in your car, there's a standard pressure that you want to inflate into to get the very best mileage, the best wear out of tires. If you overinflate them, you're going to have one set of issues. If you underinflate them, you're going to have a different set of issues. If you inflate the front 2 at different pressures, you're going to have some steering issues. We have standards, and everybody already lived with standards, but for some reason, putting them into the business becomes really hard. Oh, we don't have time to write these things down. Well, again, if you write it down, you're going to be consistent. You're going to remove some of that variability. You're going to speed up training time. You're going to let it move on. And in terms of order improvement, this is the order that you want to attack it in. You want to make it easier first. Then you want to make it better in terms of improving quality. Then you want to make it faster. And as a result, it will become cheaper. So it's not about how do I make it cheaper. It's about how do I make it easier, better, faster. And in that order from there. And so we've been banging on about it, we've been banging on about the standard work, but the benefits are huge. Right? It establishes that baseline. It codifies anything that was the kind of tribal knowledge. So how do we do it? Bert knows how to do it. Well, what if Bert wins the lottery tonight? Yeah, we'll be stuffed. We don't want that. It's really great as an effective training tool as well. And it ensures that your inputs produce the same outputs. And it also means you know what your inputs are, so it means the process that's supplying it knows what's expected of it. So it helps set the standard for them as well as you go. And the other thing is it provides a really nice safe scapegoat when things go wrong. Because things will go wrong. And again, when we're looking to problem solve, it's never the person, it's always the process. And for it to be the process and it's written down, you're able to go back and say, it's that bit there that isn't right in the documentation. And I've had the discussion with people saying, well, we don't have anything written down, so it must be the person. No. The very fact you haven't written it down is the problem. That's the process that's broke. Which is a bizarre way of looking at things. And from a standard work point of view, we have some types of standard work. So you might have some standard assembly instructions, standard maintenance instructions, how to inspect something, how to clean something. And the more visual bullet point type stuff is the better way to go. But we'll also have leader standard work, which is important. So that's things where the leader of the business should be doing set things within the day, within the week. One of them would be a GEMBA walk. I have to do that every day or every couple of days. I have to get this report out. And we'll have these standard reporting. You already have standard work in things like finance. You have to do your month-end reporting for most companies. So it exists. You just probably not codified it. And I know when I first started going into the leader standard work, when I was first exposed to it, I thought, oh, how rude. I know exactly what I have to do. And what I found was the more I did it, and I ended up with a weekly plan. This is my week. My week got substantially better quickly because I got into a nice routine, and it actually freed up time in my week rather than costly time. And it didn't. I thought I was like most people thought I'm going to be really constrained with it. If this is what I have to do, I'm going to be really constrained. It was the opposite, because as I walked the floor and talked to the teams that was responsible at the time, which was only half a dozen folk, what we identified in those walks were the real problems. And so as we fixed those real problems together as a team, they didn't reoccur. And so we didn't have to keep going back and firefighting that. And then we went on and on. And so it's a self-sustaining virtuous circle, which is always good. So in terms of standard work, it consists of, I guess, three kind of elements. One is the takt time, the rate at which the product or process has to be made, or the event has to be done. So if you do a leader standard work, your takt time for a GEMBA walk might be weekly. It might be twice weekly. And your operation making widgets, it might be one every minute. That's what, and it should be documented. We should have a precise sequence in which the operator performs the tasks so that it's consistent. We do this first, this second, this third. And there should be a standard inventory. So what are the units in the machine? How do you keep operating smoothly from there? And in terms of the standard, the other thing we want to focus on is creating those document standards. So there's always a gap, and in Lean the first gap is always, well, I don't actually have a standard, right? You can't meet something if you don't have it. So that's the black one. And then we might say, well, actually, here's the real standard is we have to get up to that next line. And once you get there, you're meeting that current standard, guess what we're going to do? We're going to set a new standard, because we want to stretch you, because we think you can do better, or we think your process can do better. So we don't know how you're going to do it, but instead of 30 widgets an hour, we'd like you to get to 31. We're not saying get to 60, let's get to 31, and then can we get to 32, and by creating that new gap, artificial gap, you bring yourself up and help people understand that it is that. You'll hit a point in your process where you can't go anymore. That's okay, but how far can you go before you hit that point is generally a hell of a lot further than people think you can go. And I say GEMBA walks is the secret weapon of any company, and especially with the leadership side of things, because you want them on the floor talking to the guys, doing what they need to do. And the more of that they do, the better, and the more likely they are to find what the visuals are in terms of visual management. This is an example of some kind of visual management. So this would be a daily run chart that we're looking for the troops to do. And so I'd be looking for my supervisors to look at these and say, well, I can see that I hit 100% or 80%, I know why. And you have that conversation on the GEMBA walk from there.
So the blue dots are saying whether you're at 100 or 110% or...
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So did you meet the output? And if you didn't, why was that? And what do you need? And so you can quickly build up really quickly how your whole thing. And so if we come all the way back to what we talked about right at the start, which is respect for people, well, what is it? It's all the things we talked about all the way through. It's the attitude that every person can and they must contribute to improving their own performance and that of the other people. So it's not just about yourself, it's about being respectful enough to say to the person sitting next to you, hey, you've not given me the best of work here, you can do better, can I help? So not passing on that poor quality, not asking for more than you can genuinely get out, not having all the raw materials for the job before you start, so you end up only being able to do half the job. People get really wound up about that, rightly so, and it's quite disrespectful. Asking somebody to work with a poorly performing machine. Well, how is that remotely respectful? Yeah, the machine runs like a bag bag of nails. Well, I'm going to get bad quality. Yeah, do your best. From there.
No respect.
No respect. And so we start kind of thinking into these respects. It's, again, different things. Providing a safe working environment. And you see I've got little asterisks there. When we talk about a safe working environment, we're not just talking about physical safety, we're also talking about psychological safety. If it's not a safe environment that I can highlight to the boss, I don't think that's right, I don't think we should do that, or I think there's another way, you will not get people coming through an improvement. And again, lean is all about harnessing the brain power of everybody in the business to drive those improvements.
That is absolutely amazing. Thank you. I've learned a lot there, John.
No worries.
I've been doing this for 30 years and I'm still learning all the time. So
yes, myself as well.
Yeah, much appreciated. That's a great presentation. I really like the respect for people and the continuous improvement in that order.
Yeah.
It's a nice summary of what lean's all about.
Absolutely.
I've always jumped to the conclusion that it's just about the 8 wastes and that it's all just tools and that's all but it's actually a whole lot more thinking around it. So
yeah.
And it's always been this command and control thing that I've been used to for years and years and years, that management are the only ones that are actually doing the thinking, but that's out the door.
Out the door. Yeah, we don't need that anymore.
Yeah, so thank you. That's brilliant presentation. Hopefully you've all got an appreciation for that. Thank you for your time, John. Thank you for putting that presentation together. And as I say, if you want more questions, contact me, or if you need help with your lean program, then contact John on the details that you saw on the first slide or second slide, and contact him through his website at minicaps.co.nz.com. Oh, it's a .com, minicaps.com. Sorry, John.
All right.
And call him on his phone or email him through whatever means necessary. Certainly connect with him on LinkedIn. He's really quite active on LinkedIn, and you can ask a bunch of questions there. So.
Yep, fire away.
So thank you for that.